Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to chat mental health with amazing humans. For this episode, I'm so happy to invite Corrie Dale to this conversation. Hi, Corrie.
I was going to say good morning. It is good morning for you. It's good evening for me. It's bedtime.
It is, yeah. You're coming in late. I'm coming in early. So we'll work through this as quickly as we can, pain-free, of course. So fabulous. Thank you for joining me for this conversation. It's so great, especially for this podathon that we're doing at the moment, the 24 hours. This is episode 18. I have to check my notes, but this is episode 18 of 24. It's just incredible. So I'm really looking forward to this chat as well, because we first got to know each other, I guess, during the pandemic. Actually, I think originally I was going to be coming out to see you guys at one point, and you're based out in Canada, and you're introduced through one of my clients. So that was just amazing to have that opportunity to plan to come, and then things changed. We did some work together remotely in these virtual environments, but it's just been lovely working with you, really, and I've just really enjoyed our relationship and building that relationship together, talking about mental health and really sort of trying to understand a little bit more about some of the motivations. I know you're talking about a little bit specifically around the area you live in as well, and some of the challenges that you've seen as well, but I'll let you do your introduction, Corrie, but pleasure to see you. Lovely to have you on this as well.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. I mean, I've watched a few of the podcasts, and it's just amazing to be included with a group of amazing humans that I've listened to. So I appreciate you thinking of me for that. So in introducing myself, as I was saying, it's difficult because do you introduce yourself as the wife for nearly 30 years to an amazing husband, mother of 2 daughters, a grandmother to a nearly 13-year-old, friend, family member, etc. And sometimes we struggle with that identity because also I have an incredibly important role as the vice president of a global defense company. And with that, and another thing that I do is I'm a co-founder of a charity for childhood cancer, which also has some mental health links that we've experienced. So that's kind of who I am. Lots of different things and master of none, I guess. But it's good. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Master of many things, not master of none. You're very important in your community and with the people that you work with, and the role that you have as well. It's such an important role to help support so many people as well. So welcome to the conversation. This conversation, of course, is going to talk about mental health. I'm going to throw that over to you as a subject, really, to tell a story around a little bit about you. You know, I want to learn more about you, as do the listeners and the people that may be listening to this would like to know so a little bit more about you, if that's okay. So tell us your story.
Sure. Sounds good. I think my mental health journey started, I started struggling with mental health probably in my teens, as most of us do, puberty and some of those things. I honestly felt like I probably, when I looked around in my teen years, my life didn't seem to be what others had, or maybe what I should be doing, etc. And I remember really struggling with that. I remember contemplating suicide. In fact, I had a full plan when I was 15 years old. It ended with an interruption of a phone call from a friend who introduced me actually to someone that she knew, who 30 years later happens to now be my husband. In addition to that, when I was, when I was 16 years old, I was, as a child, I grew up learning that you had to work hard for anything that you wanted. And so I worked in a small convenience store when I was young, to work for those extra things that I wanted that were important to me. And as part of that, when I was 16, I was held up in an armed robbery and had a knife held to my throat. Now, I wasn't harmed physically. And so, unfortunately, at the time, there really wasn't a lot of support. There wasn't victim services or anything there. And, most people just didn't understand what was wrong, what I was struggling with. Now when I reflect back to it, it really was what I would think as PTSD, and struggling through that. But, how that ended up resonating through my life in different aspects. But it also helped me in finding where I needed to go and looking for the positives in life. And then you think, I hung on to that boyfriend of mine who, we ended up being teen parents. That also was a struggle, one more step in the challenge. When I was thinking about my mental health journey, I thought it's like a good Canadian prairie road where it's just flat, flat, flat. And suddenly you're in mountains, in the Rocky Mountains, and you've got to struggle and every step up, you have to remember that there's a downhill to also enjoy, and you just got to find those. So, that's probably, something that I continue with. And again, looking for those positives is really important to me. And, it's a point of vulnerability as well to be able to speak up and speak out to this. And, I guess, as I was saying to you earlier, even in December of this past year, I really, really struggled with mental health as well. A year ago, we had been on a cycling journey in Vietnam, and unfortunately, we were all swimming, having a great time, and one of our cyclists that was with our group was swept away to sea and drowned. And this past year, as part of the anniversary of his death, I thought I was okay.
Yeah.
I thought I was fine. And suddenly I found myself with a mountain in front of me. And I just had to step back and say, what is it? Allow myself that as well. I think that's really important. Be kind to yourself, and give yourself that space. It took me a few days. One of the things for me that I found is physical exercise is something that's so incredibly important.
Yeah.
For me, it's easy to put away. I'm fluffy for a reason, but it's something that we have to just give ourselves that time. It's incredible what it can do to bring your mind back, and so back on the journey.
Back on the journey, and the journey's never going to end, right? It's just a constant. So the road's going to be as long as the road will be. And there'll be challenges, right? And I think that's what I love there, Corrie, is you've identified some really serious impacts to your mental health, breaking each of those down individually, and it's so important to recognize that first and foremost, to recognize that has an impact. And I know you mentioned about when you were working in the convenience store and what happened, the event that happened there, and that came out a lot later in terms of the reaction to that, right? And did you realize at the time when that came out that was what that was relating to, or did you have to go back and get some support, or how did you sort of get through that piece?
Yeah, that's actually interesting. So I think it would have been a couple of years later.
Yeah.
It actually was at shortly after the tragic death by suicide of a family member that my husband and I had just barely gotten married.
Right.
And suddenly we didn't know how to support each other. And so unfortunately we ended up separating again, just months after our marriage started, and decided to, okay, let's get the help and then decide if it's, on or off.
Yeah.
And it was actually that support in individual counseling sessions for me that recognized that some of this was actually, again, I needed to work on me.
Yeah.
I'm a person who doesn't believe that you can give any more than you can give yourself. You can't give it to more to others, I should say, right? So if, I always like to ask, how people are doing on a scale of 1 to 10. And if you're only a 6, you can only give a 6. You can't give a 10 to somebody else if you yourself are only a 6. Yeah. And so you really have to work on that. And that's something, it's okay to not have, 10 days. It's okay to not have 8 days, but you just have to make sure that you're trying to always put that half step forward, that full step forward, and working on yourself. So, yeah.
Brilliant. No, it's interesting. You asked me when we came onto this about my numbers, and I like that. I like this sort of form score, checking in with people to get them to give you a number that represents what's going on for them. I think it's really important, isn't it? It's and we don't often do that, and I think that's something that's nice that you've sort of introduced. I know you do that with your colleagues as well, and get involved in those sort of discussions. So fascinating journey. I think, you know, some of those low moments, if you're okay, can you just explain, and this is what I've asked many of the podcast guests to do, when you were in those low moments, can you explain the feelings that were going on for you, some of those thoughts that might be going through your head, what was happening?
Yeah, it's difficult because I think sometimes for me, especially as a leader, it's difficult for me to open up to what that actually is, because I'm supposed to always have the answers, or I feel like I'm always supposed to have the answers. And so how can I get those answers? And I think one of the things that I struggle with is the what ifs. What if that had been me? What if that had happened? Again, I physically wasn't hurt, and yet, you know, and so in that back of your mind, like you know, when it happened to me when I was 16, I had counselors in the school system, because I was still a teenager, that said, you know, get on with it. And these are experts, these are people who are supposed to support you, you know, and they didn't, and or they didn't in the way that I felt. And so then I feel like there's something wrong with me. What am I missing? How come I'm being dramatic? You know, and sometimes it's just, I don't know, it's really difficult to explain that. It just that you just feel sad. You feel, you know, there was a life that was taken in December when we were gone, and somebody that in a very short period of time I got to know, and suddenly that opportunity was gone. And it's those what ifs and stuff. You know, I know that, you know, a few days later, we ended up in an ocean resort area with crashing waves, something that I used to always love and enjoy. And I really struggle to be around water now. And that's something I'm going to continue to have to work through. It's certainly, for sure. In reaching out, we have, through our company, we have a wonderful employee assistance program that's there for all types of support, and we've really had to use that, etc. Again, and just validate that it's okay. I think one of the biggest things is remembering to be kind. The anniversary of the drowning, that was right before Christmas, so that's also, you know, a family doesn't have their father with them, and their spouse, and you almost feel guilty, you know. I remember when I had in the armed robbery, I actually had victims. I think it's remorse and sympathy, I should say, for the actual robber. It was somebody I knew. In the end, I had known him, and so, you know, the you know, background, his story, or what I believe to be his story. Nobody ever really knows anybody's story, do they? And so that sympathy of going through as well, it was something that I really struggled with, and sometimes still do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and you carry these things, and that's the reality, isn't it? You can't just sort of go, right, that's done, park it, move on. It carries with you, and there are moments where anniversaries, you know, I talk about anniversaries when I train people, of, you know, things that happen that nobody really knows about, and they come around, and you know, like you've just experienced last Christmas, you know, with that situation and the tragic incident that happened. Yeah, it's, you know, but it's recognizing it. It's really important. That's why I always try to encourage people to just take ownership of it and say, look, this is what's happening, or this is what's happened. So a couple of other things I want us to talk about, really, if possible. One is about your work and the company you're with and what you're doing with your team, because, you know, you are responsible for a workforce of people, and you know, it's been challenging over the last year in particular. And, you know, how's everything there? What have you been doing? And, you know, what are your plans? What are your thoughts with all of that?
Yeah, so, you know, obviously working in the defense industry, there comes with it we have such an incredible team, young, innovative, passionate staff members. And with that, there's a very easy line to cross, where you become so passionate and you understand the impacts of what we're doing every day, that it becomes stressful and it becomes overbearing sometimes, right? And so one of the things that we had reached out to you pre-COVID was to have you come to Canada, as you said, and help us deal with some of the mental stress. Nobody wants to be the person to let the group down, right? We've got a real knit team, and we're growing, et cetera. And so we were looking to do that. Unfortunately, because of COVID, that had to be put on hold, although we did have a great session with you and look to have, maybe a few more, et cetera. When COVID happened, I actually got incredibly sick, and so had to be away from the team during a crisis of how are we going to get the team safely? How are we going to manage this? Because it meant just a complete shift in time. Yeah. And so yeah, that has been incredibly difficult for a lot of us, changing our mindset that we can actually work from home. We have great technology using MS Teams, etc. And so we have great opportunities there for sure.
Brilliant. No, and that's good. And I know you've been real sort of driving force when it comes to sort of encouraging people to talk and encouraging these sort of sessions, especially with the teams that are there as well, because you've worked through, haven't you? You've not really had a full stop. There's not been a pause or a furlough or anything like that in sight for you. So
yeah, with our team, in fact, what I did find is that some of our staff communicated to me, I could feel it as well, is that you almost seemed somewhat resentful of those that are like, oh, I've baked my 16th cake today. And, it's just like, oh, we were working harder. We were trying to watch news reports and what's happening. Things were changing so dramatically and trying to keep everybody safe. That's the number one thing. And that's a lot to bear and think through it. And especially when I myself was not feeling well. So, and the other side is supporting our team was continuing to work, but many, had spouses that were in emergency services or in the health industry. So suddenly that's going through. And then also, some their spouses potentially are losing their jobs and the financial side of things. There's so many stresses that we don't know completely about. And so trying to support them through that, plugging away and trying to, pave the way to something I don't know what it looks like on the other side. So it was extremely difficult.
Yeah,
for sure.
Of course.
It still is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not done, is it? So it's still happening, still going on, still carrying on. So, and then the other part of that was about community within sort of the area that you're in within Alberta, within I think medicine as well, where you guys are. You've had some really challenging times, right? You really have.
Yeah. So it's actually even been featured on our national news in Canada. Our community has really suffered from what they call suicide contagion this last year. And it's difficult because, again, having had an immediate family member also die by suicide, the pain. I didn't know these young men, men, women, teachers, all, it doesn't seem to have any bounds, does it? But specifically, there was a group of young men, friends of our staff members, and in fact, for several, that shortly after each, and it's hard because not only how do we support our community is hurting, but how do I specifically support these staff members that are afraid to answer the phone because they don't know who's going to be next? I believe it was 6 or 7 friends that had been lost in a small group. Our community is only 60,000 people, and so it's incredibly difficult. It's also involved children, young teens, family members, etc. And it's just incredibly sad. And there's the stigma, and I get it. I truly get it. It's hard to reach out. It's so hard to reach out. It's hard to talk about. In Canada, we just last week had Bell Let's Talk Day, very similar to Let's Talk Day today. in the UK. And one of the things I guess maybe I struggle with is, of course, having a day to specifically talk about it, but it should be every day.
Oh,
we really need to
yeah.
be talking about it every day. We shouldn't be holding it to one day and forgetting the rest of the 364 days, right?
Yeah.
And so it's something that is really important that we keep talking about it. I've been pretty vocal about the exercise program and things that I find helpful.
Yeah.
My numbering system. I've had several people, acquaintances, friends, family, reach out to me privately saying, "Hey, what's your number? Today I'm a 3.
Okay.
Today I'm a 6.
Yeah.
Today I'm," and that's okay. Unfortunately, what I would do outside of COVID is say, "Hey, let's go for a beer. Let's go for a coffee. Let's go talk. Let's," not so easy to do on video. A few text messages here, try and reach out to a few people every day. How you doing? But there's also, we got to also remember to take care of ourselves. And that's probably one of my biggest challenges. Despite what I say in my head, what I know in my head, my heart tries to reach out in ways. I try my best. And
yeah. And that's and your best is good. That's enough, isn't it? And it's all you doing something is important. That's the key. Reaching out and just, and I've talked about this a number of times on these, but just sending that message to somebody can have a massive impact. And that's what we have to remind ourselves is, if they expect it, then that's normal. But if they don't expect it, and often we can just drop messages to people randomly, and the nice thing is when you receive it and you're not expecting it, and it's just a nice, how are you, what's going on, and just checking in, and we can do more of that, can't we? Corrie, I'm going to really have to apologize because we're running out of time, and these honestly, why did I set this up like this? We are really running out of time. From me, huge thank you for staying up late and coming on this with me. I was set to do it for 24 hours anyway, but no, thank you for taking part in this. I really hope that you've found it okay. It's not been too uncomfortable for you. Any final words or comments you want to share to sort of galvanize the people that might listen to this, or give them some words of encouragement or support?
I think there's 2 words: be kind. Be kind to others. You don't know their story. You don't know their situation. Be kind to yourself. Because, especially right now, we don't know what's around the corner. And there's no rule book on this. There's no build instructions for this. We got to just keep going, working together as best as we can, and just be kind.
Be kind. I love it. Yeah, be kind. Such an important message, so simple. And it's something that we can all do, and we can all just be a little bit more kind to ourselves, to others, and to everything else that's going on at the moment. And if anybody is struggling that's listening to this or watching this, please know there is always resources and support out there to help you in your worries, in your worrying time. So please make sure you pick up the phone or chat to a friend or reach out to somebody if you're worried about somebody yourself. There are resources that really can help. Samaritans, and I'm a Samaritan in the UK, and in Canada you have your own crisis lines as well, which make sure you know who they are, make sure you recognize that there are supports out there, and really do remind yourself of that constantly. I keep saying it every time on these, but I will keep saying it, because if one person takes the number and picks it up and gives a call, we're doing a good job, and that's the most important thing. So thank you, Corrie. Really appreciate your time today. I wish you all the very best with everything, and I will speak to you all soon. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt.